Alright, got some free time today, so I figured I'd make another video. Why not? I like doing these. So I watched a bunch of videos today, a bunch of undisputed stuff and stuff like that about the MVP race. So as far as I know, as far as I'm concerned, there's only two people in the MVP race right now. It's Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes. So I watched Cowherd's videos again. Like I said, don't hate Colin Cowherd. Like the content he puts out, I watch about every day. I like his content. A lot of stuff I agree with, a lot of stuff I don't agree with. But for the most part, his stuff is decent. Now, I argue a lot with what he says, especially on topics like this. So today we're going to talk about the MVP race again. Look, I'm a nobody. He's a sportscaster. He gets paid to do this stuff. I wish I got paid to do this stuff. There's only one real reason why Patrick Mahomes wouldn't be the MVP at this point, and that's because you're just looking for a reason not to give it to Patrick Mahomes. Or in this case, Drew Brees as well. So we're going to look at the ups and downs and the odds and all this other stuff. So we all know Patrick Mahomes had one bad game this year and they won 30-14 against the Jaguars. That was his bad game. He went 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That was about the only bad game he had. He only had 2 games this year with 1 interception or less. The other game was the Broncos. He had 2 touchdowns or less. The other game was the Broncos. He had 1 touchdown. So I've heard a bunch of crazy things from Colin Cowherd, and I even went as far as to he put a comment on one of his videos, and I commented back to it. That's how far I've went. I don't insult the guy. I'm not, like I said, he's never going to answer to me. I'm a nobody, but I sure as the hell wish he would. So look, this that he's got going on, he calls Andrew Luck the MVP of the season. Look, Andrew Luck, I'm going to touch on this again because I touch on this so often. Andrew Luck is by far the comeback player of the year. By far the comeback player of the year. He has earned that. And he's had a pretty decent season, for himself. But let me reiterate, MVP is about what you do in the entire season. It's not about the first 6 games. It's not about how well you played the last 10 games. It's because I know a lot of guys that could be MVP in the first 6 weeks that aren't even close now. My point is, I don't see what his valid point is. I really don't. Some people say, oh, well, his valid point is that, Andrew Luck doesn't have a whole lot of receivers. He's got a better defense than Kansas City. He's got a better defense. I would say his defense is subpar to New Orleans. Maybe not better, but it's on par. Look, I'm going to be completely blunt and honest. Andrew Luck, a lot of the games that they lost, he performed really well. And a lot of the games that they won, his defense pulled him. He held somewhat of his weight in some of the games, but his defense pulled him. you know, like top 5 quarterbacks in the league. Ben Roethlisberger, 5,129 yards. Patrick Mahomes, 5,097 yards. Matt Ryan, 4,924. Jared Goff, 4,688. Andrew Luck, 4,593. We all know who leads in touchdowns, you know, all that other shit. But let's go. Let's do this. When it comes down to it, Kansas City has had the dead last defense almost every single game this year, if not the dead last defense in the game right now. The only good thing about Kansas City's defense is the pass rush, and sometimes they play when they have to. They've had opportunities in other bigger games that they lost where they had a chance to sew it up and they didn't. Kansas City's had the dead last defense. There was games where Patrick Mahomes threw 3 picks and still put up 51 points. The Rams. Then New England threw 2 picks, and he still put up 40 points. What other quarterback is Andrew Luck going to do that? Hell no, he doesn't. Not even close. Because he can't. Look, Drew Brees, great player, amazing player. I'm not going to take anything away from him, but to give this guy the MVP just for the fact that he's been in the league this long and you think he deserves one, you're out of your mind. You're nuts. That's not how the game works. You don't do that. Patrick Mahomes, statistically, except for completion percentage, which Drew Brees had one of the best completion percentages in a year possible, that's the only category he beats him in. And he threw a few less interceptions. But other than that, Mahomes skunked him in yards and he skunked him in touchdowns. You know, what more do you want? And Mahomes has scored 50 touchdowns this year through the air. That's not what he ran for. He ran for like another 2 or 3 or something like that. I can't remember. Andrew Luck is nowhere close to even being in the MVP race, let alone competing with Patrick Mahomes. I don't know where he gets that idea. Colin, you just tell me when you're getting married to Andrew Luck, and I'll be there. Because it's very apparent at this point in time that you are just so attached to Andrew Luck. You're so in love with this guy, you can't grasp the fact that he's not as good as what you think he is. Andrew Luck, better defense. Pat Mahomes lost his running back halfway through the season. Sammy Watkins was in and out of it the whole season, so he didn't always have Sammy Watkins. Alex Smith had the same receivers the last 2 years. What did he do with them? Not as much as Mahomes did. So why are you using the receivers as an excuse? I get it. Andrew Luck would probably be better if he had Kelsey or if he had Hill or both. I'm sure he would. But to this magnitude, I don't think he would. Andrew Luck is like, he's like Phillip Rivers and he's like Drew Brees. They're great quarterbacks, and Tom Brady. They're amazing quarterbacks until they get pressured. Any quarterback is opposed to pressure. Any quarterback is bad under pressure. Mahomes has a special gift of getting away from pressure. These guys, you pressure them, they have nowhere to go, and they become twice as bad. So if you're wondering, Andrew Luck played 16 games, 430 completions out of 639, 67.3 on the completion percentage, which, by the way, he beat Mahomes by 0.2 of a completion percentage. Actually, let me check on that. Patrick Mahomes had a better QBR than he did. 66.0. So due to Andrew Luck's last game, he bumped up to a 1.3% better. QBR, QBR, he ended up with 71.5. Okay. Patrick Mahomes came out with 103.8. That's your overall. That's how good you are overall at the position. He skunked Andrew Luck at overall. QBR for Drew Brees this season, 115.7. So Mahomes ended up better than him in that aspect too. Or no, sorry, he ended up behind him in that aspect. Oh, but Drew Brees didn't play the last game. It wouldn't have mattered. He finished with 32 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. What? Was he gonna throw 18 touchdowns in that last game? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I seen where he made the excuse for Andrew Luck. Oh, but he won 100% the first 6 weeks. Bullshit, man. He was too. He just played like shit, and that's your excuse for getting away from it because so many people brought it up. That's your excuse for it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he just crap on Cam Newton saying that, oh, having a dislocated shoulder and playing the last 6 weeks isn't an excuse for you and your throwing arm. It isn't an excuse. Dislocated in his shoulder arm, in his throwing arm, and he still played. Granted, they lost every game. He still kept him in the game. For the record, they think he dislocated it against Pittsburgh. That's how long he played with a dislocated shoulder in his throwing arm. But that's not an excuse. But Andrew Luck supposedly not being 100%, which is bullcrap. And here's another thing. He said there's certain quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers that need everything to be perfect for them to win. Why are you sitting here saying that Andrew Luck doesn't have any weapons? T.Y. Hilton, Rodgers, he's a good receiver. Marlon Mack, good running back. His line's good. He's got a fast defense. Why can't he win? And by the way, he wants to talk about the last he wants to talk about the last 10 games. Okay, let's look at the last 10 games. What was it? They won the last 10 of 11 or something like that, and their only loss being to a 0-6 loss to Jacksonville, a donut hole. Okay, let's look at the last 10 games. So you're going to tell me him thumping the Bills, the Raiders, the Jaguars twice, or the Jaguars once because he got beat by him, the Titans twice, the Dolphins, the Texans, which they ended up beating somehow, the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Titans again, and you're going to tell me you're impressed by that? How could they not get in the playoffs? Dallas was the only good team they beat. And granted, they thumped Dallas pretty good. I'll give them that credit. They thumped Dallas pretty good, 23-0. But they played them at Indianapolis, and apparently Dallas had a bad game. That's the only decent team they beat. So if you want to talk overall records, okay, let's see what the win-loss record between the teams are that he played in the final go-around this season. Right? I know. Okay, so there's 66 wins. In those 10 weeks between all those teams. Now, let's see what they got for losses, right? So between that just got all messed up. Sorry, I know this is tedious. So between all those teams, it comes out dead even. 66 and 66. So at best, the Colts were playing an average of 500 football teams. Okay? And some of these guys, they were barely beaten. Some of these guys they didn't even beat. But you're going to tell me over the past 10 weeks, they get throttled by the Jets. And then the next 10 weeks, they beat the Bills, the Raiders, the Jaguars, the Titans twice, the Dolphins, lose to the Jaguars, beat the Texans, beat the Cowboys, which is the only good team in this entire bunch that's over 500. And then they beat the Giants, and you're going to be impressed with that. Which, by the way, in the last 6 games of the regular season, Andrew Luck was 16 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He averaged almost half the interceptions that he did touchdowns. Which, by the way, he ended with, what is it, 15 interceptions? So he threw damn near half his interceptions in the past 6 weeks when they were winning. When they were 5-1, he threw almost half his interceptions in the league, or for the year. The first 6 weeks, he played decent teams, and he got beat by them. Cincinnati finished 6-10, beat him 34-23. He got beat by the Redskins, who were 7-9 to finish the season, but had Alex Smith at the time, 21-9. Philadelphia beat him 20-16, playoff team. Texans beat them in overtime, 37-14. New England throttled them, 38-24. And then finally they got beat by the Jets, who finished 4-12. This is elite to you? This is elite. That's why you don't mention the first half of the season. Because all of those damn football teams, the Redskins were good at the time, the Bengals were good at the time. But those 2 teams ended up being crap. The Eagles made the playoffs. They beat them. The Texans, they split with them. The Patriots just absolutely murdered them at Foxborough. For God's sakes, the Jets beat them, and they were awful. That's why you don't mention the first half of the season, because the decent teams he played, he lost to. But all those garbage teams he beat in the second half of the season, you call that an MVP? And, well, you had a shit first half of the season, but that second half of the season, that was good. No, it's about the entire season. And to me, Mahomes was the only one that was consistent the entire season. Drew Brees had his up and down near the end of the season. Andrew Luck was like this. He would win a game and throw 2 picks and no touchdowns. His defense pulled him. That's what happened. His defense pulled him and his run game pulled him. Wasn't him throwing touchdowns. Get out of here. You have to be an absolute madman to think that. And I heard him spew off a comment that he thought the Colts could go to Foxborough and beat them. Are you kidding me? They got destroyed when they played 38-24 when they played them in Foxborough. There's no way in hell the Colts are going into Foxborough in the playoffs. Do you remember the last 2 times the Colts played the Patriots in Foxborough back-to-back years? The Deflategate. Back-to-back years they went there and played them in the playoffs. Got annihilated both times. Got absolutely hammered both times. I'm not talking about beat. They got destroyed. They can't beat the Patriots. Andrew Luck is not good enough to beat the Patriots. He never has been and never will be. And he says this team's going to be up 10 years. I'll see it when I believe. I'll believe it when I see it. Hands down. I'll believe it when I see it. Because I doubt it's going to happen. My guess is Andrew Luck's going to get pressured and he's probably going to get hurt again at some point in his career. And that's probably going to be the end of it. He's probably going to get hurt again. I don't see this team beating Houston. And there's certainly no way in hell he's going to Foxborough and winning. That's just not going to happen. I'm not even sorry for that. Let's look at game stats, okay? Where's the Patriots? Okay, his completion percentage was 64.4 that night. Not great, but not horrible. 365 yards looked good right there because he moved the ball. 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. And you just got done bashing Mahomes about how he can't play in big games. He only lost to New England by 3. He put up 5 touchdowns, I think it was, and 2 picks. 6 touchdowns, 2 picks, something like that. Threw for over 400 yards. This guy lays a goddamn egg in New England, and you're going to totally biased opinion. He's not an MVP. He's not. He's not an MVP. I don't care how much you like him. I don't care how much you want to put your ring on his finger. I don't give a shit about all that. That is a biased opinion. And you know what? Personally, I would think it's kind of lopsided if Drew Brees does win the MVP. But if he does, I feel like he did deserve it. Do I think he deserves it more than Mahomes? No, not this season. But I do think Drew Brees as a person, as a player, does deserve it. I agree with that. If these guys were to go to Andrew Luck and give it to him, the NFL's rigged. Plain and simple. Plain and goddamn simple. If they gave it to Andrew Luck, the NFL is rigged. There's no excuse. Drew Brees, better defense than Patrick Mahomes. Drew Brees doesn't have to put up 50 points after he throws 4 interceptions. Yeah, it's almost impossible to win this league with 2 interceptions, let alone 4. Drew Brees didn't have either one of his running backs quit on him halfway through the season. Or, get kicked off the team for domestic violence. Actually, Drew Brees probably has the best running game in the NFL. Between Kamara and Ingram. Better running game, better defense. He's got Michael Thomas. He's got a decent tight end. I mean, he's got decent weapons. They're not the best. They're not Kelsey. They're not Hill. But that's where it evens out. You see what I mean? And his stats were significantly better. Alex Smith didn't do this with the same weapons Mahomes has. He didn't do it. He didn't do it last year. He didn't do it the year before. That should tell you right there. Mahomes does what Mahomes does. Mahomes is his own person. Oh, give Drew Brees those weapons. Yeah, Drew Brees would probably do something like that with those weapons. He probably would. But he's not going to have a running game behind him either. And his line's not going to be as good. Andrew Luck, you give him those weapons, I still think he'll break 40, maybe 45. I still don't think he's going to do great with it. I really don't. Give Andrew Luck and Drew Brees the defense that Kansas City has. Great pass rush. Everything else sucks. Give those two guys that defense. How about that? Put that one in your mind. Drew Brees can put up 40 points, maybe 50 points, depending on what game it is, what team he's playing. Think Andrew Luck can do that? He put up 42 one time, and it was on the Oakland Raiders. He put up 42 one time this season, and that was on the Oakland Raiders. There was a few games where he got 34. Once again, trash bag football teams. Tennessee, he got those 30 points in garbage time, those 33 points. Most of it came in garbage time. The Giants, he beat by 1 point. I mean, come on. Giants have arguably one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and it's Eli, and they don't have anything good going besides the run game. Like I said, the most impressive win was the Cowboys, and the only reason they won that was because of their defense. It wasn't because of Andrew Luck. Because if you go back and look at the Cowboys, 192 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 59.3 pass completion percentage. So you tell me who won that game against Dallas. That was the only good team they played. Who won that game against Dallas? Was it Andrew Luck or was it his defense? 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Who won that game? 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Who won that game? 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. Who won that game? Who won it? Because it wasn't Andrew Luck. It was his fast-ass defense that was winning him those games. Don't say shit like that, Colin Cowherd. You know it's bullshit. You got a quarterback that beat one good team in the past 10 weeks that you're referring to, and it was the Cowboys. And in that game, he played like total dog shit, and they beat him 23-0. His defense pulled it. 59.3 completion percentage, 192 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a quarterback rating of 81.1. His defense won the game against the only good team they played in the past 10 weeks. Conversation ended.